Okay, we're back. And it's May, we're recording. But this is going out in June. I don't know if anyone's shocked to hear that we do things ahead of time, but that's our flow. That's our work. But it's getting hotter. It's getting hotter all around. It's getting hotter in New Mexico. It's sunny and beautiful, and every morning I hear the birds chirping, and it's really exciting. I'm like, "Okay, yes, good weather."
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, I'm
yeah.
not feeling that here where I am, so I'm very, very jealous.
Remind us where you're at.
I live in central Pennsylvania.
Oh, yeah, that's a
Okay.
big difference.
Yeah, what's the weather like right now in Central Pennsylvania?
It's fairly cold and rainy.
Is it always like that? I have not been to Pennsylvania.
In comparison to New Mexico, it is always like that. Yes. I mean, there are some sunnier days, but it's a lot of gray. I didn't mean to, Nadia, cut off your intro too, but I got
No,
jealous.
you
No, it's fine.
no, like we said, this is a conversation, and
Mhm.
I've started this podcast almost the same for, like, 3 years, so now it's time I'm trying to switch it up by just being looser, and I listen to more podcasts now and seeing what other people are doing. Granted, a lot of those are comedians who are way funnier than us, but it's hard when you're not funny professionally and you're funny to break up the work week. Those are 2 different kinds of funny. So, just in case people were wondering, this is Connect with Adult Ed, the Nemea podcast. I'm Nadia Cater. I'm your host, and I am joined today by, of course, Jamie Trujillo, our co-host and producer
Hi.
extraordinaire. Yes, and a very special guest, Anna Kaiper-Marquez. Anna, one of our questions wasn't a question; it was a statement to introduce yourself.
Okay.
And the reason why I've been starting to do that is because I get so tongue-tied, and this is so embarrassing, but let's have it in anyway. When I was at COABE back in April, I was introducing my colleague to some people, and these people, I see them on LinkedIn. We've had conversations every year at COABE. Hey, this is, and then my mind shuts off and I can't remember who they are or what they do. And it's
Yeah.
embarrassing and awful. And it makes me look terrible. So that's why I like to lend to other people to introduce themselves, because you have a pitch, or you should. Everyone should have a pitch. This is an informal call right now for our listeners. If you don't, get it together, because you're going to introduce yourself better than other people. I assure you. So, Anna, I'm going to ask you to please introduce yourself.
Okay. So I don't always start my pitch like this, but my name is Anna Kaiper-Marquez, and I am a native New Mexican, even though I live in central Pennsylvania. I am from Espanola, New Mexico. My mom's home is there. My husband is from Espanola, New Mexico. His family is there. So I deeply, deeply care about the state and about the work that's happening in the state. And that's why I'm so honored and excited to be on this podcast. So that was like part one of my kind of shtick. My second part is I'm an educator. I was an adult educator. I actually started as a middle school teacher, a special education middle school teacher in the Bronx in New York City for several years. I moved to Thailand and I taught. Then I moved back to New York City. Then I moved to Argentina and taught English. Then I moved back to Espanola and I was an English language and GED math teacher at Northern New Mexico College for a few years. Then I got my PhD in comparative and international education in Minnesota. And then I started my work at Penn State, which is why I still live in central Pennsylvania. I was associate director and assistant teaching professor at the Goodling Institute for Research in Family Literacy and the Institute for the Study of Adult Literacy. So that's where I really got involved with more research and evaluation work with adult education and with family literacy. I was also at the same time a family literacy instructor. And I loved it. And I realized that so much of my life as a middle school teacher and as an adult educator had been missing something. And what that was that I was not thinking about my students as whole people living in an intergenerational system. I was really focused on either their roles as a student, or as a child or as an adult learner. And family literacy was able to kind of fill those gaps and de-silo a lot of, what I was taught and what I did. So I missed working with programs and with families. And so for the past 3 years, I have worked for the National Center for Families Learning as the Director of Family Literacy, otherwise known as NCFL.
Okay, see, that was a great pitch whether or not you were planning that because I'll be frank, I thought I did my research. I didn't realize you had a PhD. So that was on me.
Oh, that's
Uh,
okay.
so I've been calling you Dr.
No,
Kaiper-Marquez.
no,
No, you don't want that?
you can call me Anna. That is more than
Doctor
acceptable.
Anna? Okay. But when I
No,
get
just
my
call me Anna.
PhD, I want people to call me Dr. Cater. I'm gonna require that. I'm in a PhD program now, that's why I say that.
Oh, you
So
are? Oh, awesome. In what?
learning sciences.
Oh,
So yeah, it's at the University of New Mexico. The program is the organizational information and learning science. So it's a different approach than traditional like ed psych to just how people learn. But yeah, so like I was saying, I'm gonna start making people call me Dr. Cater.
well, I
Yeah.
did for the first couple years, so don't you worry. I just, I'm now more comfortable with that role. So I'm like, okay, you can just call me on it. But if you ever need like a dissertation reader or something, let me know.
Oh my goodness. See, I appreciate that. And also, you said it on a recording, so that is a verbal contract.
Folks, you are hearing this. This is yes. If I don't do it, then you can call me up and complain.
Yeah, everyone spam the National Centers for Family Learning the email, like, "When are you doing Nadia's dissertation?" But
No,
oh my
I
god,
appreciate that because sometimes I need to be reminded of things. So this is a good reminder. I will read it anytime you want.
you're really sweet. Yeah, we're just playing around here today. I guess I'm in a fun mood. Jamie was polite enough to turn her mic off, just like people like Jamie's not just sitting there silently while me and Anna are laughing. She's also laughing. I like to add that.
I'm laughing a bit too loudly on mute.
That's perfect. I desperately need our audience to know how funny I am, that's why. So, not at all.
Well,
Let's get
I'll make
to
sure to write in the reviews of this podcast. Number 1, Nadia is so funny, and number 2, Anna was the best person you had on.
There you go.
the
Yep,
best
yep.
guest ever. We decide that when we finish the first question. We
Yes. That was what you
okay.
needed to know. It is done now. Yes. Podcast
Well,
over.
all joking aside, so, as mentioned before we started recording, we were just so excited that New Mexico is doing so many big things, and we're really, like, stretching into different areas, so it was really exciting to learn that we're working with the National Center for Families Learning on this family literacy initiative. Is that the term, Jamie? That we're using?
It can be. Yeah, it can be. Yeah,
Okay.
the Family
It is
Literacy
now.
Initiative. Yeah. Mhm.
Yes.
It's a big priority, I guess. I
Yes.
don't know if there's any state words that we're supposed to, but this is an interest, especially with literacy. So, Anna, can you please, as the expert here on this call with me, Jamie, and you are the expert. Maybe for our audience, you are also the expert. So please tell us, what is family literacy?
Okay. So I'm so glad you're asking this because I feel as though one of my biggest hurdles has been that people have preconceived notions of what literacy is and what family literacy is. And so they put both of them into these buckets that don't actually highlight the expansiveness of what it is. So I used to teach some grad courses on family literacy, and I would start with what is literacy? And people would usually say reading, sometimes writing, and usually in English. And then I would say, what is family literacy? And they would say, usually, it's reading with a child. And so we really take this yes and approach. So, yes, literacy is reading. Yes, it can be in English. But first of all, I mean, we really lean into the notion of multiple literacies. So, literacy is reading, writing, but it's also, digital literacies, legal literacies, health literacies, numeracy, so on and so forth. And in order to really hone into those literacies and really support those literacies, you need an intergenerational approach. And that's what family literacy is. So, family literacy was put into federal legislation in the early 90s. It is under WIOA Title II. And essentially, it goes through four components. So, those components are adult education, children's education, parent time, which is the way I like to say it is adult education is the time where adults really get to center on their identity as learners. And parent time is the time where adults get to center on their identities as caregivers and community members. So that can include support with understanding your kid's school. It can include, understanding of like report cards and things like that. But it can also include those other multiple literacies. So, do folks need support with different legal literacies? Who can you bring in from the community to support with that? Can you bring in someone from the bank to support with opening up a bank account or understanding insurance or understanding how to create a nutritious meal? Things that oftentimes in adult education, especially if we're focused on, the need for MSGs, we don't have time to really lean into. So it's really that additional support. I'll also just say with the parent time piece, that's the time where caregivers, and by the way, when we're saying parents, we're using it as shorthand for any adult caregiver. So that could be a mother, sister, aunt, uncle, cousin, father, grandparent. So it's really the time for adults to come together, gain social capital, and share each other's knowledge with one another. So that's really a key piece of that piece. And then the fourth component under federal legislation is called ILA, Interactive Literacy Activities, but it is very well known under our registered trademarked name of PACT time, parent and child together time. And that's the time where parents and children come together and learn from one another. So that will look very different in an early childhood setting than it might in a high school setting. Under Even Start, which was the federally funded family literacy, initiative, there's that word, Nadia, that took place for many years. That was really centered on early childhood, like 0 through 5, 0 through 8. However, what we're seeing at NCFL with the four component model, which we helped put that into federal legislation, is there's nothing saying that we have to only center on children that are in an early childhood age. So we have programs that are really honed in on caregivers and their children who are in middle school or high school. So pack time could be, the child supporting the adult with their learning. It could be sharing, knowledge of digital literacy skills together. It could be, really it's kind of debunking that power hierarchy so that we recognize that parents are their children's first and most important teacher, but also children can also be their parents' teachers. So it's that time to bring together those components. So that is the four component model of family literacy.
Wow, that I'm just taking it all in. I'm like, "Whoa, okay." Family is huge.
So
And
can I say
yeah.
something else, Nadia, about it, which is I feel like people think of family literacy as a program. Like it is a program that you put in. And so yes, like it and it's something that people just like do as this alternative program. And what we're saying it's actually a model for reframing our thinking of the purpose of education. So it's not adult education or family literacy, even though we know that AFLA says Adult Education and Family Literacy Act, because adult education is the core component of a family literacy model. But instead, it's recognizing that adults are not these separate beings who don't have families, are not in the community. Instead, they have these multiple identities. So it's really trying to recreate more of a holistic model of support that recognizes the needs of children and adults and how those work together.
Can I say how much I really love that overarching view of what family literacy is as a whole? Because I think especially when you think about legislators and how budgets are made and how funding is allocated, things are siloed so
Completely.
much as if human beings aren't these complex beings with so many different components of our lives that are all interconnected. So I just love so much that you purposefully mentioned that because it really is. It really isn't a siloed thing. Everything connects with everything. Health literacy. You were talking about being a caregiver as a parent, but also doing things like being able to read insurance forms and being able to make appointments and things like that. Like it's all connected. And I really appreciate that you brought that up.
Thanks, Jamie. And I think the other interesting part is, I mean, we know that there's a lot less funding for adult education, but there's so much funding for children's education without the realization that if children are not living in homes where their families are literate or having, skills where they can access systems literacies, legal literacies, health literacies, like you can put in as much money as you want into that child, but it's not going to give you the impact and outcome that you want because it truly is intergenerational. And I do want to just note too, I don't say multi-generational, I say intergenerational because multi kind of again assumes those silos. Like we're working with adults and we're working with kids, but we're saying no, 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 you have to like work together in order for it to really make change.
And at the
Yeah.
risk of going on a little tangent just for a second, I think about cultures throughout the world where everything is intergenerational, like you were saying, where grandparents are in their grandchildren's lives on a daily basis, and that's just the way things work out. Or even programs where they pair college students with elderly individuals and have them live together on purpose. And, for the college students, they get free rent. For the elderly, they have that company and that caregiver that's also, what turns into a friend and the benefits of those relationships. Like what you were talking about just reminded me of all that, how beneficial having that intergenerational approach can be just for really everything.
Yes. And what's so cool is even that example, because I love that example, that could fit into a 4 component model, right? Because if you think about, okay, what is the learning happening for, in this case, the adult might be the senior or it might be the college student. So both of them are getting their own learning goals met. Then there's community supports happening, which could be considered parent time. And then when are they coming together to share learning? That's pack time. So it's still that 4 component model, just with a different demographic.
Hmm.
Yeah, and wow, okay, I lost my thought on, like, what I was gonna ask, but I which is
That's because I went like super off script. Sorry.
no,
And I
actually,
went on a tangent
it
too.
was
Sorry
Jamie's fault,
about that.
so
It was my fault. It was totally my fault.
That's Jamie's.
yeah. No, but it's joking aside, I'm really appreciating all this, and again, I'm just really taking it in. I kind of like from what you were saying, Anna's like it's not siloed, and that's something like in general that we're trying to do. I mostly work in professional development, so that's something also like we're trying to change that kind of culture mentality of
Mhm.
like they're separate. Because I know it's super different, but it also makes me think about that kind of teaching to the test, like with GD, of like just teaching to the test, yes, it's gonna get that intermediate goal of passing, but what else do you do with this information? Do you use these skills? Is just getting the high school equivalency the most important thing? Not necessarily. So we have to really think of these things of like, how are we supporting our learners beyond the initial goals? And another thing that you were saying about the sort of intergenerational, like, yeah, you could pour all the money into all these educational programs. If they're not in a home that does have these skill sets, that do these literacies and this literacy practice. And when I say that, I'm not talking necessarily about academic, but just
No.
reading and having these skills at home to apply when things come up. Like we are social learners. And I say we as like the human race.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
so your environment directly affects how you learn and what you learn and what you take from that. So it's so important to have that intergenerational environment, if you will.
Yes.
Please correct me if I'm using the wrong language here because I'm
No, but even like when you bring up the example of, the teaching to the test, I mean, I know when I was a adult educator, I wasn't thinking about, okay, what are my learners doing when they go home? How many people are they caring for? How are they navigating the systems that they're navigating? How did they get here in the first place? Who are they talking to about their own, needs? What are their children learning? I wasn't thinking about really a lot of those things because I was so focused on meeting a gain, And so I think for me, again, it's like family literacy is, if nothing else, a reminder that all of those things play a part in even just the passing of a GED.
Absolutely. And that's not to, and I don't mean this in a way to sort of shame educators that do that. Like,
Yeah, no.
you're a part-time adult educator. It is so hard to keep all this together, as
Yes.
well as what's going on in the educator's life, right? So, like, who are you taking care of when you leave the classroom? How are you getting your needs met, your benefits, if any? There's educators that have multiple jobs, responsibilities. They're caregivers. Like, sometimes I think we also inadvertently silo ourselves. We are adult learners too.
Yes.
The content is different, but the strategies still work.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah, you could take something that you use with your students in your GED classroom and put it in a professional development content environment. It works. So, like, we know that intellectually, but it just fails in practice. So, I'm just really excited to just sort of like really think about how these different programs that your organization tries to address, which leads us again into our next question. What is the National Center for Families Learning?
So, NCFL, the National Center for Families Learning, has been around for 37 years. It was started with our founder, Sharon Darling, who essentially, she was an educator. She's from Kentucky, and she was working with both children and adults and recognizing that there was this gap in intergenerational learning and made it a point to try to mitigate that by the creation of these four components. And so she was a major advocate, again, in putting this into federal legislation. Since then, we do our work with family literacy. We also have programs that are really amazing programs that support what we call family engagement, which is really like the parent time, pack time kind of piece of family literacy. And then we also have programs that really center on parent leadership. And a lot of that, Jamie, I would love to hear more about your work because a lot of that is kind of trying to support parents in figuring out what their own goals and, passions are and how they can, how and who they can talk to make some of those happen. So that's our work in a nutshell, but really the mission is to eradicate poverty through education solutions for children and families. And so a lot of our work is working very closely with smaller communities, with states, with families, and doing a lot of co-design, kind of taking these broader models and ideas and really co-designing them with our community partners to make sure that they match the needs of that community. So none of our work is the same in any site that we work with. However, particularly for the family literacy work, the model gives us kind of a framework for what we can build off of, but the who, what, when, where, how is really kind of malleable depending on the folks we're working with.
So I think what you were getting at was the professional learning communities that NCFL engages in. So if you could maybe go just a little bit more into detail about those professional learning communities and how those operate, that would be really great.
Yeah. So from the family literacy team's work, we support the growth of family literacy in several different ways. So when we're working with one community, we have what's called a pre-implementation series where we work with the core team who is kind of overseeing family literacy to really build and plan what the program is going to look like. So we really start getting into partnerships. Who are the core partners? It goes back to Nadia's point about, people might be part time and working multiple jobs, and we're not expecting that one person or one entity is going to do all four components. So partners are really, vital in this. So who are going to be your core partners? Who is going to provide children's education? Is that going to happen at a K through 12 school? Is it going to happen through out of school time? Is it going to happen at a CBO? Who's going to provide pack time and where? Is that going to be in person? Is that going to be what we call unfacilitated pack time, where it's, in the home or in the community? What programs are you going to use? What is that going to look like each week or each month? What is parent time going to look like? Who are the partners that we call secondary partners that you can bring in and maybe give a 3-part series on nutrition or a 2-part series on, legal literacy? So we kind of start working with the planning of that. That leads to a 2-day training that we have. And then a lot of that model of that one-on-one community model is with coaching. So we have one-to-one coaching as well as, site visits and so on and so forth to really make that relationship strong with the coach and the community. What's really cool about the work we're doing statewide, though, is it's taking a little bit different of an approach. So we have national professional learning communities where all of the folks that we work with across the nation. So currently we work with like 40 family literacy sites. It's an opportunity for them to come together and share each month what they're doing in their family literacy programs and really kind of create those connections, those professional connections, those bonds. But we also have started statewide professional learning communities. And so in New Mexico this coming year, we are going to do asynchronous piece where the grantees are going through different modules where they're learning more about each component, really starting to solidify their own programs, solidify their own partners. And we're also meeting every other week with them through Zoom or, through Teams to really develop those ideas together. So what did you learn from the asynchronous modules? What questions do you have? What are you really looking to build? How can you support one another? And so the whole point of that is we don't hold that contextual knowledge. We don't know what's happening in each community. We can give you the model, we can give you the overarching support, but really it's up to you all to support each other. And so there's been incredible work that's come from our PLCs in the past, and it's really led to much stronger programming. The only other thing I'll say about that is one of the pieces we really try to get into is sustainability, funding and sustainability. So how are you going to ensure that your program is not solely funded under one grant? How are you going to use braided funding? How are you going to make this a sustainable program? I think that was something that was not always thought about in past iterations, and we've really tried to be mindful of that. So, for example, Jamie, when you're talking about legislation and different policies and different funding supports, one of the things that I think sells family literacy, if nothing else, is there are multiple title funds that support family literacy. So there are Title One, Title Two, Title Three, Title Six, and all of these are looking at different components of the family literacy, but they're all supporting it. So how can you use that funding together in addition to other funding sources to really sustain a family literacy program? I think that's one of the strengths as well of kind of coming together and really utilizing that contextual knowledge.
Wow, that is so comprehensive. And I just love how there's so many different pieces, so many different partners, so many different interconnected entities that you need, really, that you need to be able to make this work and to make it sustainable. And I love that you emphasize that, the sustainability of it. And I'm so glad that you once again touched on the fact that we are going to be partnering in New Mexico to be doing this, because the more that we've been talking, the more excited I'm getting about this, because family literacy honestly has been in my brain just on a personal level for many years. And I've kind of been stuck on how to make that work. And I stopped working for a local program several years ago. And so it kind of just went back to the wayside in my brain for a long time. And I love that it's coming back in such a way that I'm so excited that Amber, in her, great wisdom, and I know Amber may or may not hear this, or if people may or may not tell her I said this after hearing the podcast, but I just am in awe of Amber Gallup
Oh,
all the time.
she's amazing. She is like
Her
a rock
vision,
star.
She is. She is, and I'm just in awe of all of her vision and of her willingness to listen to, what we need and the things that we would love to see moving forward, and family literacy being a big part of that. And so that does lead me into the next question. When you look at that overarching umbrella of adult education and adult literacy, and for all of the adult education and literacy programs that are listening, how does family literacy fit into all of that?
Okay. So first of all, I also want to say shout out to Matt Edelin as well, because he's been a huge point of also kind of creating and making this vision happen. So they are this
Absolutely, yes.
incredible kind of
Shout
duo.
out to Matt. Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to say something that is slightly unpopular with some, but in my view, the umbrella term should be family literacy because family literacy embodies adult education and, right? So every single person that I have ever taught is part of a family. Whether they don't have to be a parent, but they're part of some larger family. And I can, family maybe with a capital F, right? A community of some sort, intergenerational supports. So to me, really, I know I say this too much, but like family literacy is really adult education. Yes. And like it really is. How can we continue to do quality adult education and partner with other entities that often don't even know what adult education is to really make the case for not only why adult education is important, but why it's going to impact your communities, your children, and everything else. So I feel as though if we kind of recreate our idea as solely serving adults and think about really how we can serve the whole family, it just opens up a lot more opportunity for our work. It opens up a lot more opportunity to sell our work, especially in political spaces. It opens up a lot more opportunity for persistence. I was a researcher prior to this job, and as we all know, adult education persistence and retention is a huge issue. And so it opens up opportunities for that. So it's just a different way of thinking about the whole person. An example of that, something that we're starting to work on, and actually Sarah Casisio is helping with this work, is thinking about our focus on the workforce, right? So we know right now that is the main focus that everyone is talking about, and we know that it matters. However, once again, going back, Jamie, to your point, we all have multiple identities. And if we're solely focusing on our role as a worker, then we're forgetting that I might not be able to go to work if I don't have childcare. I might not be able to do work well if I'm worried about my children's grades. I might not be able to get a solid job if I'm also taking care of my mother. I myself am in a sandwich generation. I take care of my mother who has Alzheimer's. I have a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. So just focusing on work alone is just not going to cut it. So we're thinking of ways in which we can take that 4-component model and really lean into work. So how can the adult education piece really center on workforce? Maybe could it just be, with IETs or other career pathways or internships that the adults are getting? Then could children's ed be centered on workforce with a lot of the career and technical education programs that are taking place in middle and high school? So that's the children's ed. Then could quote unquote parent time be time where the adults are really gaining access into understanding both the career pathways that their children are going through and also their own community needs to get a better job, to support, starting a bank account, to support, applying for different positions. And then could the packed time be the child and the adult working together to talk more explicitly about careers? That's still family literacy. It's still a 4-component model. It's just that it's integrating more explicitly that workforce piece. So I think there's, a lot that we can do with it and play around with it. It just gives us a way to think about it in a connected, more holistic way.
This is the hard hitting stuff right here. Not only focusing on the IET come on programs. It's a big deal. I right now, IT is really huge, and a part of that is
Mm.
because there's funding and interest.
Yeah.
And that has an effect on programming, and that has an effect on relationships building. And I think that, you're saying that it really does need to have this interconnectedness. And also the braided funding is such a smart idea. I'm so excited for that because funding does affect where we're focusing our energies and what outcomes we're hoping to see. So this is all really excellent. I'm really excited. I'm just really appreciative. That's just me. I don't even think I'm saying anything remotely intelligent right now, but it's just so
No, I'm so excited. It just is nice to hear that you are. And I do feel like the interesting part of my work and family literacy is a lot of my work used to be on language. I was like a linguistics, like applied linguistics person. And I did a lot on like translanguaging and essentially kind of like building off of code switching. Family literacy essentially is like the perfect code switching material because I can find something that attaches to every single person's needs in this 4 component model. So I'm not going to say to a principal, hey, family literacy really helps with MSGs, right? But I can talk about how it might help with school attendance or it might help with parental engagement. I'm not going to say to an adult educator, hey, you should do family literacy because it really is great for children's attendance. But I can talk about measurable skill gains, workforce outcomes. So it kind of provides you with a framework to talk about the whole program to different people in different ways. But all of those outcomes are still true. So we're actually getting a lot more data showing that those families who are enrolled in a family literacy program versus in the same program, those that are just enrolled in adult ed have higher measurable skill gains. So those are the kinds of things that speak the language of adult educators. And I think the more that we can kind of get that data, the more that we can kind of pull folks in that, making those gains is a real thing. Like it's attached to funding, we get it. So we're trying to really make more of those explicit connections as well.
uh
Man,
wow.
I know, right? Like, I think Nadia and I are both just like, wow,
Well,
minds
I'm also
blown
just
at the moment.
thinking we've been talking for like 40 something 40 50 minutes. And I'm like, "Oh, what's going to be the thing that really grabs people?" Family literacy increases MSGs.
Well,
Here
how
it
about this? Family literacy can get you more money and increase MSGs. How about
is.
that?
And you know what's so funny is for me, it was all about the workforce because Nadia, like you were saying, like IETs are just really hot right now because that's where all the funding is going.
Yeah.
And, Anna, when you were talking about how to make the data fit with what is important or where the emphasis is, we can look at how family literacy impacts workforce readiness, how it impacts employment,
Yeah.
all of those things. It's
Yes.
there, you know?
Yes. And,
So
I used to like when I was writing my dissertation, because my dissertation was on the English language learning of domestic workers in South Africa and the role of adult education in the history of South Africa. And a lot of people talk about adult education as the ugly stepsister of K through 12 and early childhood, right? It's like kind of this niche, oh, it's adults. That's like not so sexy. We don't care about, and I do feel like one of the things I've seen on the ground is when I'm working with family literacy programs who are having to come together and partner, for the first time ever, community members and K through 12 educators and superintendents are hearing what adult education is. They've had no idea what it was. They had no idea of the adult education literacy or the literacy crisis, the 59 million, like no idea. And so for the first time, they're hearing it and then they're becoming advocates for adult ed. So I think, we can advocate as much as we want, but if we're still speaking to the same audiences, it's not going to, do the work. Whereas creating more of those 4 components and everyone speaking to different audiences also just helps with our ultimate goals.
I couldn't agree more. I think you are absolutely right on with that. All right. So here's the big wrap up question.
Okay.
Right? The big one. What is one thing about family literacy that people do not know about and should know about?
The one thing that people don't know about is that family literacy doesn't have to be the thing that you thought about based on the one grant you heard about that happened 10 years ago, right? So a lot of grants are very specific and very prescriptive. Even certain states are very specific and very prescriptive, saying that, pack time and parent time and adult ed and children's ed, they have to be in certain spaces with certain numbers of hours in certain modalities. But we currently don't have any research disaggregating the quantity of the four components and how that leads to impact. And so it's very possible that you might already be doing family literacy and you don't even know it. It's very possible that you are already connecting the dots and you're just not calling it that. And no, maybe you're not doing, a home visit every week, or maybe you're not doing 6 hours of pack time a week, but that doesn't mean it's not family literacy. And so if you have been involved in family literacy before, especially under these larger grants, that were wonderful grants, but, quite prescriptive. That doesn't have to be synonymous with the overarching idea of family literacy. So if you're already thinking holistically, if you're already thinking intergenerationally, if you can say, oh, yeah, we do something that's kind of like parent time, maybe with our wraparound services, or, oh, we do bring parents and children together, maybe you're already doing the four components. And if you are, then start speaking that language.
I love that. Thank you. And I think I'm going to leave it to Nadia to wrap up the episode.
Oh, it's on me.
It is on
Uh,
you.
well, okay, I'm sandwiching.
Can I be honest though, guys? I never get it's thanks for just listening. It's so nice to have someone just asking these things and talking. So I know I tend to be a bit verbose, but I just really, really appreciate you even taking this time. It's clearly I care a lot about this, but I really appreciate you guys even highlighting it.
Oh,
Oh, yeah,
absolutely.
it's part of
Mhm.
the oeuvre of adult ed that we wanna cover, and we're appreciative that you agreed to do this. So, well,
Yeah.
I always, emphasize just thank you so much for your time, your expertise, being verbose. I feel like if a podcast people aren't verbose, I'm not really
True.
what are we doing here?
Mhm. Mhm.
This could be a Google Doc with questions and answers, so,
Right,
um
exactly.
yeah, but I'm really floored about this new for New Mexico, but also just being able to talk to you in this space. We with this podcast, we're just it's a way for people to learn about what's going on and also to have these thoughts and considerations that maybe might not have occurred or making these connections that might not have occurred. Like that's my goal of cuz I'm the learning professional. Not the only one, obviously, you guys are both in different very different ways. But and everyone is that we talk to, but just, how can we support our audience and giving them a platform to hear from their colleagues that are not just going to conferences? And on the reverse, our guests being given a platform to talk about this stuff when they might not be given those opportunities.
Yes.
And it's also great that I can use my work hours for this, this is
That
Thank
helps.
yes. Thank you, Amber Gallup and Tina Height for for giving me this opportunity to talk to colleagues, to just have this space. I am so grateful, and for that, I'm grateful to you, Anna, to just really talk to us, and I just love hearing you talk, and we only met in person where both of us were aware because you told me that how you heard me answer a question in a session at COA, but we never really connected. So,
Yeah, I
um,
wanted to meet you for a while, so
oh my
I'm glad.
goodness,
Yes, and same with you,
plus.
Jamie, actually, to be honest. This is
Oh, thank you.
awesome for me for both reasons. But I think, to me, the most special thing, and I'm not just saying this, the most special thing that New Mexico has done as a state is rethink what was into what can be and really put that into play. We're so used to early childhood being expensive, adult ed being a certain way, like all of these things just kind of being the way they were. And you all have done such an incredible job of moving things forward into the future versus like thinking about just how we could do it in the past. And I guess that's why I love family literacy so much because I feel like it's the same way. It's like, how can we take these things that we know are important and do it in a more unified system to move it toward the future? And I feel like New Mexico is a perfect example of that already happening. So that's why I'm really excited to get to do the family literacy work there.
Thank you. That's really sweet. And also, just to piggyback on what you were saying, is the day-to-day operations at the programmatic level and the higher are so important and so vital. And I don't mean to criticize that in any way, but you do also need these people to have these dreams and these future forward thinking so that we do not stay in a cycle of doing things as we've always done until a drastic change happens, like having a reactive structure,
Yes.
which means like when funding is cut, when your staff isn't retained because, all this time they've been working with no benefits and low pay and not always a supportive environment to do the things they do. You really do need people to be like, things can be different.
Yes.
And those voices need to be louder and need to have those opportunities to work in those spaces and not just be, a voice in the echo chamber. So
Yes.
I appreciate those thoughts because there's definitely people that we want and need to talk to and give them this platform so that our audience can hear those voices,
Yes.
can
It's so
dream.
cool. It's so cool.
Don't forget about My Adult Ed Story, a continuous project that highlights the lived experiences and origin stories of adult education and literacy practitioners. Each story is unique, and the more we learn about each other, the stronger our network becomes. Please consider sharing your written or audio recorded story with us. A link to the My Adult Ed Story page, as well as submission instructions, are included in this episode's description. We look forward to growing this collection.
Connect with Adult Ed, the NMEA podcast, is a project of the Propel Professional Learning System and is funded by the New Mexico Higher Education Department's Adult Education Division. Thank you for listening.